Hello, beautiful people. It's Tuesday morning, and I'm right here with Emily, the beautiful Emily, the founder of Fuel and Inspire, a brand that specializes in helping nonprofits secure funding, strengthen their organizational foundation, and amplify their impact. Emily is passionate about helping nonprofits tell their story the right way. If you've been within the nonprofit world for some time, you did know the power of storytelling. That's basically the secret to getting funding. And today, Emily is going to be showing us how to tell your story the right way so that you can begin to bring in that funding, so that you can begin to bring in those supports that you need to be able to grow and scale your mission. Emily, I'm so happy to have you here with us today. Could you quickly introduce yourself and tell us more about what you do and why you think storytelling is so important and why you're passionate about telling the stories of nonprofits?
Well, thank you so much for having me here. And I will do my best to help your audience understand more about storytelling. So, I guess storytelling has always been in my blood. I have been storytelling since I was a child. My family would always tell me stories of magical worlds that may or may not be in existence since I was a kid. So, I kind of grew up with that feeling. And as I, grew into adulthood and found my way through the nonprofit realm by accident, a lot of grant writers will tell you that they did not intend to start as a grant writer. I definitely didn't. It was not on my radar. I started as an artist and studied studio art and performing art and everything around the visual and performing arts. So I guess you could say I was a storyteller through who I was and naturally gravitated towards nonprofits after a few attempts at starting some companies in their 20s and just got into that realm. I have worked through it as an outreach and development coordinator. I have been a technology teacher, so I've had face-to-face contact with some constituents. I've worked a year in the United States government as a contract closeout specialist and went back into grant writing. For the last 5 years or so, I have worked with several different companies, a lot of organizations, some for-profit, some nonprofit, writing millions of dollars of grants. I've been awarded at least 1 million that I'm aware of through my efforts, and I have written $2 billion worth of unsolicited government proposals. So I'm aware of kind of all realms of grant writing. I did start Fuel and Inspire because I found a pattern working with all these clients that people don't know what a grant is. They don't know about fundraising. They don't know how the process works. Even in the government, I was speaking to people who were there serving our country, and they didn't even know what a contract was. They didn't know how it operated or why it was needed. So I wanted to create a platform so that people have free resources to understand what a grant is, understand branding, understand marketing. Why is it so important? If they want to work with me further down the line, I would absolutely adore that. But I wanted to have this resource. And when I published it, I was astonished to find a lot of organizations in Africa and other countries are coming to me going, well, how is this done? Which expands my knowledge of NGOs. It expands my knowledge because I'm US based. I really only know the United States. But in my previous companies, I had sold all over the world. So I was familiar with different areas in different countries and how you would approach that. So I'm really truly honored and blessed to be able to start this journey to help people both locally. I'm based out of Jacksonville, Florida, but I serve people across the nation and across the world. So it's fascinating to learn about people, and again, it's their stories that really move their organizations.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's go straight into the meat of it all. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see nonprofits make when telling their story to potential donors?
They focus on either the sale of it or the being very humble. So they don't necessarily overall, they don't necessarily recognize how to portray their story. Like they understand their need, they understand their audience, but they don't know how to emphasize that, how to utilize that, how to leverage it. A lot of funders want to hear these details. They want to hear who it is you're serving. They want to know, the finest detail that you might think might not be necessarily politically correct to put out there, but they want to know it because they want to empathize with what you're doing. They want to have that connection. One case in point, I remember this funder approached one of my clients and did receive a grant from them because their husband, the woman on the board, their husband was suffering from this illness and they wanted to support research. How would the foundation know about that? They wouldn't know about this. It was a very private matter. But as they tell the story of this certain ailment, it connects with their audience. It touches people that you don't even know are looking at what you're doing. I think the greatest mistake that a lot of people in general, they don't realize people are watching you. You think you're quiet, you think you're going to maneuver here or there, but there are people who are quietly watching you and seeing if you're consistent, seeing if you are portraying, the situation accurately and are able to support. So I think it's time to break free and not be so quiet.
Wow. Just hearing you talk about portraying the story, it brings to mind one thing I've always known. Storytelling is one of the way to gain influence. Basically, if you were not to use storytelling to gain influence, you would want to talk about the different features, the different impact, basically a whole lot of facts that basically would hardly get direct into the heart of who you're trying to talk to. But storytelling bridges that gap. It portrays the impact, shows the emotional connection, and in a few minutes, you've already gotten deep into the heart of the person you're trying to connect with. And I think that's really very important for founders and nonprofits to know. You don't have to go about talking about the facts and all that, long narratives. By using your story the right way, you can actually get directly to the heart. And then people want to connect emotionally. That's the only way we tend to connect. We connect more emotionally than with facts. So I think storytelling is one way you can actually create that emotional connection. And one of the things I've always known is people make decisions based on emotion, not even based on logic. They justify it based on logic, but then make the decision based on emotion. So I think storytelling is really that bridge where you can actually get them to make a decision, whether it's a funding decision, a supporting decision, whatever you want them to make. If you're able to tell your story the right way, I think it's going to go a long way. And I really appreciate you saying that, Emily. So let me ask you this. How can an organization craft a narrative that not only inspires but also leads to sustained donor relationships?
I think that is the hardest question that a lot of nonprofits face because they're too close. They're too close to the subject matter. They know it too intimately, and they don't necessarily know how to portray it. And as you mentioned, we definitely work on emotions. And my background is also in sales, in performing arts, and having a company. I bring that into a nonprofit. So having somebody who's aware of how to, help with those emotions, bring it out, and ultimately get funding out of it in an honest and concise way that definitely supports your organization, but also respects the funders as well. Because it's not just, hey, I need money, you have money. It's how are we going to work together? How can I support your mission? And how can you reciprocate that support by funding what I'm doing so that we can work together? And I think that's where professionals definitely have to get involved, at least at the beginning, to help you everything up, to set up your narratives, to have a discussion. Part of what I do at my company, Fuel and Inspire, is I offer a 30-minute strategy call for free because a lot of people are just so hindered by price tags and hindered by even coaching. And I like to have that honest conversation, with no money attached, because it helps guide the nonprofit to understand what it is they might be lacking, what it is they might need to improve upon, and what it is that are their strengths. So definitely bring a professional on board, even for an hour or two, and take notes. Go on YouTube and start listening to some phenomenal grant writers. I know there are books out there are videos out there from people all across this world who want to tell you about grant writing. So just look at their background, make sure they know what they're doing. They've been doing it for a while. But yeah, I would definitely start with that because if you are a nonprofit leader and you start out, you're just going to basically kind of put your wheels into the tracks. And that doesn't always bring in funding. So definitely be not a professional.
Mhm. You know what? Just listening to what you say now, because I was once a nonprofit founder myself. You know, when you're so close to the mission, and you keep telling the story, you keep telling your story. So from time to time, you would think, well, I've said it this way before. Let me say it this way. Let me say it this way. And then you keep changing the whole narratives, or basically, try to tell the stories in different ways. So I think that aspect of bringing in a professional to really help you map out that one story that can really stand out to your organization, I think it's really very important, because as people, when we keep telling our story one way, we may think, oh, I've said it this way before, I'm saying it this way over and over again. How about I try to change it somehow? But at the end of the day, you may end up, um, hitting or altering the structure of your story that may really get people to really feel it. And then when you keep saying it, it's not the same people that are seeing it over and over again. So you basically have to have one structure that you keep saying, so that even if a new person comes and then hears it again, they still feel the same way, just as the people who heard it yesterday felt the same way. So I think it's really very important, the aspect of bringing in a professional to help you really map out your story, to help you really structure it in a way that gets people to be attracted to your mission just by hearing your story. Thank you so much for saying that. So, in your experience, how do branding and storytelling work together to strengthen a nonprofit fundraising strategy?
So one thing a lot of nonprofit leaders don't understand is the power of marketing and sales. They don't recognize that. And by marketing, I mean you need to build your brand. A lot of the times, these funders will do research on you. They will talk to other funders. They will talk to other, people in that realm. Have you heard of them? What are they doing? Are they present on social media? How up to date is their website? How interactive is their website? Can I contact them if I need to? So they're going to do some pretty in-depth research and vetting before even approaching you at times. I have spoken to officials within the United States government who are in charge of grants there, and they basically say the more you're in front of them, the more that you're at the webinars, cameras on, and not a representative necessarily, but you or somebody in your staff are there and asking questions. They're active. They're applying for the grants. They're just really interactive. It creates a brand. It creates who you are. If you have that logo, you have, those videos of your clients or what you're doing in the community, and even having, I think this is an old term, but like a street team, passing out flyers, stickers, magnets, being present at local community events. It really is important so that when people come by, they know who you are by your logo. I can say, a big nonprofit name, and you will think of their logo, you'll know exactly what they're doing, you know exactly who they serve, and that is where even the smallest nonprofits need to get to. Honestly, I have been online in some capacity for the last 20 something years, and right now is a wonderful time for a small nonprofit to get out there and really compete for larger names. They just need to know how to set their marketing and branding right so that they are up to par. Because a lot of people would love to go to the smaller ones rather than the larger ones, but they need to know who you are. Even if you only serve a local community, that community needs to understand who you are. And case in point, in Jacksonville, I have seen a few people who have been very, I guess, adventurous with filming their small craft fair, or filming their small museum. And I'm seeing it on Reels. I say to my husband, hey, let's go check it out next weekend. I get there and it's really small. And they said, yeah, somebody took charge of that and was able to produce it. So we're able to get more people in. So branding is a very powerful tool that you need to utilize.
Mhm. Just hearing you say this, it reminds me of one of the advice I always give to board members. Make sure, to nonprofit founders, make sure you have a fundraising professional or a marketer within your board, because you're not just talking fundraising, you're not just talking program execution, you also need to be able to brand your organization. And somebody within that space can be able to advise you and really lead the organization in that part where you're well branded. Because one of the things I've learned within the nonprofit space is funders want to align with people of value. Funders want to know that you are valuable, you have a great organization, and then they can align with you to also build their own brand. So if you have a great brand, you just made your fundings, halfway. You just basically helped your funding halfway because people would always want to align with your brand. They always want to align with the organization. So I think branding is also very, very important. So, can you give us an example of where storytelling directly led to a major funding opportunity? Basically, what that process looked like?
There's one that stands out in my mind, and I was working with a company that had a client who onboarded, and they were back and forth, but they had 2 weeks to submit a block grant for a substantial sum of money. Somebody had approached them, one of the officials, they approached them saying, we need you to fill this out because they were aware of what they were doing in the community. That was how good their branding was, that people were approaching them. Now, the founder, it was too much because what you're doing is just taking on so many different hats, and fundraising is key to keep doing what you're doing, but to have that on top of your other responsibilities is too much. So for 2 weeks, I worked extremely close with this woman because I knew nothing of her nonprofit, I knew nothing of the demographic, and I really wanted to best represent her because the situation was very, very intense. It was to deal with specifically Muslim women and children who are immigrants here from Africa, really trying to support their health needs, their educational needs, and any needs that they have in an inner city. And I had to learn everything about it to demonstrate in this grant, why this funding is needed and do it so powerfully that it does connect with the reader. And thankfully, she was awarded around $268,000 for that effort. So, you know, think of it that way, that, if she wasn't able to have that brand in the community, the official would never reach out to her. And if she didn't have such a powerful story, she wouldn't get funded. So it's definitely important to have both. Again, people are always watching you.
Hmm, I like that. Wow. So, regardless of your demographic, regardless of what you're doing, storytelling can actually bridge that gap. Because so many founders, so many nonprofits are out there who think their mission is insignificant, it's difficult to raise money. But what Emily is telling us now is with the right story, you can be able to break in, get that funding you need to be able to, create the impact you've been called to. So for an organization struggling with visibility, what's the branding move that you think they should make?
First and foremost, you need a website. There's no excuse. Don't get it free. Pay for it. Find a way. It needs to be in your name. You need to have that domain. It needs to be .org. Or if you're in a different country, you have that extension, but it has to be very specific. After that, social media. You want to get at least 2 channels that you feel people are on. Not that you're on, but your demographics on. So if you're working with younger people, go on TikTok. If you're working with business people, go on LinkedIn. So find that channel and then connect it up with your website, have brands consistent across the board, and just be as consistent with posting as possible. If you are not able to do it, this is what interns are great for. There's a lot of people right now in college who are looking to get into content creation or management. So check out volunteers or interns. I mean, I'm always pay your interns on that board, pay your volunteers. But have these people come in for a season, do what they can, teach somebody internally or hire them on because that alone will help your exposure.
Mhm. This is one of the advice I give to founders as well, uh, to be able to build out every aspect of your organization, especially at the early stages where you do not have the resources to hire. You should be able to bring in volunteers, interns to work with your team to be able to execute consistently for the result that you seek. Because to create results, you need consistency. There has to be consistency in execution, and you can't do it all by yourself. You can't wear your board members out by trying to do it, you all by yourself. So you need a team that's going to help you, even if it's just an hour a day. 5 hours in a week, 10 hours in a week, you know there's that consistent outreach going out. So you should be able to bring in volunteers or interns to help you with such level of execution. So I really love that you pointed that out. So what's one practical step or a few practical steps you think a new or small nonprofit can take right now to improve their storytelling and fundraising success?
Be honest. I mean, you started this for a reason. There was some reason you did this. And just be consistent. The hardest thing I see from executive directors and leaders in nonprofits is that after the initial, I guess, high of getting it started, it starts going down. Nonprofits are a long game. When you get funding, it's going to take 6 months to a year. And when we're looking at larger funding, it might not even happen for 3 to 5 years. So you have to continue that momentum into those hurdles. So you need to bring people around you, whether personally, professionally, with mentors. Bring people who are going to cheer you on, who are going to bring you up. Don't isolate. It's the easiest thing for executive directors to isolate and just get really focused. But that can burn you out so quickly. So take a day out of the week and just have it when you get it. And then surround yourself with just great people, great atmosphere, because you're going to need it to keep going. Connect with professionals in the field, even if it's for a moment, and say, yes, I'm on the right track. This is what we can do to keep going, and we'll circle back in 6 months. So stay consistent and take time to take care of yourself, because it is a very difficult, and I see that all the time with executive directors. My job is to take stress off their shoulders. That's what I do. It's part psychology too, because I hear people and I hear what they're saying. I don't take it personal, and just you've got to find a solution. So just keep going, stay strong, and surround yourself with just amazing people.
Awesome, awesome. If there is one story that I know that can really stick, is the story of why you started. Because one thing I have come to say within the nonprofit space is there are other people out there who had the same reason as yourself, who wanted to start out something like just like you started, but basically maybe they do not have the time, they do not have the resources. That's why they probably didn't get started. So you being able to share that story is one of the best ways to attract this kind of people who can then put their support, provide you their support to help you achieve your vision. So I like the fact that you pointed out why you started. You must always remember that that's one of the most attractive force you can put out there to get people to blind behind you, support your mission. So Emily, what's one piece of advice you would give to nonprofit founders who want to build long-term relationships with funders?
I think that's just it. You're building a relationship. This is a partnership. You want to make sure that they're invited to your events. You want to politely ask them, hey, can I put you on our newsletter? Can I send you some material about what I'm doing? If they're local, do not be afraid, if it's allowed, to go knock on their door and just welcome yourself. Old school fundraising also involved, going out for lunch or a cup of coffee, talking to founders. I mean, it's not gone. This is not completely virtual. In fact, where I am in Florida, it is definitely encouraged to have that personal touch, to talk to people, to understand what they're doing. And you're building a friendship because, again, everyone talks to each other and they're all looking at you. So you want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward, making those connections and networking. And again, I can almost hear people say, "But I don't have time to do it." If you don't have time to do it, your board should do it. If you don't have time, your board doesn't have time, bring on volunteers or staff members who can do it. Because again, that's going to build your brand, it's going to build your story. We're going to have that conversation. And more often than not, I am seeing board members or honorary board members going out into the community and raving about nonprofits and then getting funded because you're setting an example, you're building your story, and you're building that brand where people want to engage with you. So it's not all on your shoulders. You're basically creating a snowball effect. Bring more people into your circle and just have them advocate for you. This is also true in business as well. You want to build a brand no matter what you're doing and be able to have that honest marketing so that people can connect with you and ultimately they can fund you.
Awesome. One of the things I do usually advise also when it comes to building a board during the onboarding stage, one of the tools we ask that you give to board members is what we call the story bank. So you need to be able to put together these different stories of transformation your organization has created, and then hand that over to your board members so that they can still keep sharing that out. This is the transformation we're creating. These are the stories. That's one of the ways I see you can really attract support to your organization through your board members. So you saying, board members going into the community and sharing the stories and getting funded, that really attract aligned with what I really believe in. Be able to accumulate these stories and make sure they are valuable to your board members so that they can go into the community, they can go across their social media handles, share these stories. This is one of the most attractive forces you can have for your nonprofit. Thank you so much, Emily, for saying that. And thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. You've dropped so much word here that any founder, any nonprofit that's serious can begin to use this to transform their work and create impact. What do you have anything else you want to share with nonprofits?
Yes, absolutely. Again, right now, myself and a lot of other great writers out there are understanding the way funding and fundraising is changing. So in 2025, I'm not going to dance around the fact it has been a super interesting year for fundraising. So when you bring somebody on board, make sure they fully understand the atmosphere that's going on out there. There is still funding available. There's still federal funding available. People are still giving out money. So don't lose hope. Just bring somebody on, such as myself, who can help maneuver through this minefield, as you will, and be able to best represent you in every situation. So do not be afraid. Don't be overwhelmed. There are people who've been doing this a long time and would love to support you. And again, I have a free 30-minute consultation if you want to go over to my website at fuelandinspire.com and sign up. And I'd love to talk to you.
Awesome, awesome. And aside your website, where else can they reach out to you?
I'm also on LinkedIn. I am also starting a YouTube channel, all under Fuel and Inspire. So again, come on, connect with me, and let's have a conversation.
All right. And if you're finding it hard to reach Emily, reach out to me. I'll just direct you straight up to her. She's wonderful. She's been doing this for a long time, and she can help you get your story out there, help you get funded so that you can scale your mission and transform your organization. Emily, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge. I'm definitely sure just because of what you did today, so many organizations are going to be creating results they've never dreamt of before. So I thank you for showing up.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody has a great day today.
All right, we will.